Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Central British Columbia, Prince George, Canada. And for all those people watching us from around the world, they're saying, okay, we know where Canada is, and then British Columbia on the west coast, right? Right. And there is a big city there called Vancouver, right? And we are 500 miles north of Vancouver, or 800 kilometers, which puts us in the center of British Columbia. Amazing province, lots of lakes and lots of forest and all kinds of other things here. Amazing, amazing country. Today we have a very, very special guest. Her name is Amber Abila. And Amber, did I say that correctly, your last name, Abila?
Amber Abila.
Abila, okay. Amber Abila, and Amber is a big eating recovery coach who helps women stop creating and finally feel normal and in control around food. For years, Amber looked like she had it all together, successful, driven, and health conscious on the outside, but secretly felt trapped in a painful cycle of binge eating. So binge eating, most people have heard the term. What does it really mean for people to understand what it is?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for having me, John. I'm excited to have this conversation with you today. Binge eating is a recognized eating disorder. It is actually the most common eating disorder in the US and in a lot of other developed countries as well, which most people don't know. A lot of people think it's probably anorexia or bulimia, but it's actually binge eating. And binge eating is described by eating a larger amount of food than most people would consider normal within a 2-hour time frame in a way that feels out of control, that feels overwhelming, that feels panicky, anxiety filled. And so it's really a way of eating that's to the extreme. So we think about sometimes someone might have an extra cookie after dinner. That's more overeating, and binge eating has a lot of similarities to overeating, but binge eating is really more to that extreme of where once we feel like we have something, we feel like we can't stop and we just keep eating.
And so, how common is it, Amber? Is it still somewhat of like some of the other things are that are becoming more and more public? What comes to mind is neurodiversity issues. People are speaking more about it. Is that the case with binge eating, that it is coming more to the open?
Yeah. So last time I checked in the US, 3% of the US population struggles with binge eating. So that's a pretty decent percentage of the population. But what's interesting is binge eating was not categorized and recognized as an eating disorder until 2013. So that was only a little over 10 years ago. And because of that, there's a lot of misinformation out there on what binge eating is, how you stop binge eating, where it starts and comes from. And that's really what I aim to do today and in my work is to help people have a different solution that actually works. Because how I got into this work is I've struggled myself with binge eating for many years. And I tried all of the traditional routes, including therapy, including intermittent fasting, going sugar-free, all of these different things that were suggested to me, but nothing stopped my binge eating until I started learning about our brain and psychology.
Okay, so let's talk about what it isn't. And a lot of people misunderstand it, referring to it as anorexia, for one thing. And so what isn't it?
Yeah. So binge eating is not just eating a little bit more than your fullness levels. So maybe you go out to a nice restaurant, you think, oh, this food is delicious, I'm going to have a little bit extra. That is just part of being a normal natural eater. Whereas binge eating is more, it's usually secretive too, at least for me it was, where I would hide from everyone and I would just consume massive amounts of food in a really quick, out of control way. So it's not as much of a big deal of if you're just eating a little bit extra now and then, going a little bit past fullness, that can have its own consequences. And stopping that can be very similar to stopping binge eating. But binge eating is really this larger amount of food, feeling out of control around it. And more people are binge eaters than they think. I would say it's more on the side of you're not sure if you're binge eating or not. You probably are if you're questioning it. But to me, ultimately, the label doesn't really matter if you're a binge eater, if you're an overeater. What matters more to me is I help people who are eating more food than their body needs and going way over this point of fullness. So if that's what someone identifies with, that's exactly who I help.
And the result of that can be, other than obviously eating too much, which is not good for you, a person. In what sense is not good for a person, other than is overweight connected to it, or other things happen to your body that is trying to produce much food through your body, which works adverse to some of your organs? Is that all part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Anything associated with obesity could also be associated with binge eating, because if you're eating more calories than your body needs frequently, that of course can lead to weight gain, heart disease, diabetes. Pretty much every other condition can be tied into binge eating. And if you think about it, even if someone has a good metabolism, or maybe they're over exercising to compensate for the food, just the act of eating more food than our body needs is very taxing on all of our systems, of course, mainly our digestive system, where even if you were overeating on healthy foods, it would still be really hard on your body, because it's having to figure out, what do I do with all this extra food? Where do I put it? How do I process it? And then your digestion is turned on a lot longer than it needs to be. So I see a lot of people with digestive issues, stomach problems, gas, bloating, just pain anywhere throughout the digestive tract, heartburn. All of those things make a lot of sense, because again, your body is having to process all of this extra food, which is very difficult for it.
So I can, just from a lay perspective, I can see for myself, not now, but at times, that I probably was addicted to, and that's probably is meant to, the result is addicted to sugar or sweets, that and sometimes even thinking that products are produced with the objective that you like eating it because it tastes good. Sugar may do that, although sugar is very bad for you, especially when you have too much of it. Or I try to now avoid it, mainly is because I don't believe it's good for me. But
Yeah.
is that the kind of addictive thing that you get? I would eat something like something that is very, very sweet because it tasted good, and I was addicted to the taste, and likely
Yeah.
sugar.
So I'm glad that you brought this up. My opinions on sugar have changed over time, especially as I have done more research into how our body learns what to crave and how it knows to crave some things and not other things. I used to teach an approach of eating everything in moderation. And this is what we hear a lot of the times, just have some sugar in moderation now and again. But one, this is kind of hard to do. A lot of people struggle with doing it in moderation. And a lot of people don't understand the actual impacts of how sugar impacts our body. Now, we all have heard that sugar is bad, sugar is killing us, sugar is poisonous, all of these things, but none of us really understand the root cause of why sugar is bad. And that starts with understanding how our body learns to get its nutrition. So we have this learned relationship in our body between flavor and nutrition, where, let's say, for example, you were to eat a strawberry, your taste buds can't always taste all of the micronutrients in that strawberry. But what it can taste is the basics of, oh, this is sweet or savory or bitter. And so as it eats the strawberry, it tastes the strawberry flavor. Later on, as the vitamin C and other strawberry nutrients arrive in your gut, your brain makes this connection of, okay, when I'm tasting strawberry flavor, I get strawberry nutrition. Now, the problem with sugar and also natural flavors, which are another topic that we can go into, but we'll start with sugar. Sugar itself, when we're talking about pure processed white sugar, it is this isolated molecule of sucrose. So it has become so far removed from the sugar cane or the sugar beet that it was originated from. and has now become this one molecule of sucrose. Now, the problem when we isolate the molecule from its source is now the plain white sugar doesn't really have any flavor to it. Now, let's use an example of, let's say you were to make an apple stew where you took water and an apple and you were to mix sugar into it, just pure white sugar. What would happen is that would taste like a stronger flavored apple. It would taste like a sweeter apple, which to your taste buds would usually mean, oh, this is a more nutritious apple, because in nature, when a fruit is sweeter, it has more nutrition. But there's no more nutrition in that apple. It's just the sugar disguising it. So it deceives our body on what's coming in. And that's why we like the sugary things, is because to our taste buds, it means nutrition is coming in when really it's just a stronger flavor of whatever it's with. Now, if you think of something like honey or maple syrup, let's say you took an apple and you put honey all over the apple, it would taste like a honey flavored apple, right? You would taste the honey. And that's really the main problem with sugar, is that because it's an isolated molecule away from its source of flavor, of the natural flavor that it comes with, it's not able to accurately be detected by our tongue of what's coming in. And so it deceives our body about the level of nutrition that we're getting from it.
Now, to me, the question is, as a layperson, saying natural sugar is okay, but white sugar is not. What is white sugar? What is it? What is it made of? Where does it come from? Is it artificial? Is it, because, that it's not good for me, I know that part, but natural sugar, some people say, don't have too much of that either.
Yeah, so a lot of the reasoning around the natural sugars is, well, it's still high in sugar. Our body is made to process sugar. We would not have sweet taste bud receptors if we were not able to process sugar, if we weren't able to have sugar. Cats, for example, cats can't taste sweet things because there's no need for their body to have anything sweet. It's not a nutritional need for cats, so their taste buds cannot detect sweet. Our taste buds can, which shows us that our body has been built to and designed to process and eat sweet foods, such as fruit, such as honey or maple syrup. And because our body is made to process these things, it has natural systems to help it stop. What would it be if it was such a design flaw that our body would never stop craving sugar and it just kept wanting to eat and eat and eat forever? That would be a horrible design flaw, and that would lead to a lot of problems and obesity and all the things that we're seeing now if that were coming from natural sugars. Now, in order to understand why a lot of people might overeat on some of these natural sugars too, we need to understand this concept of intermittent reinforcement. So let's say that sometimes you have the sweet apple and it gives you the nutrition, and sometimes you have an apple that's coated in sugar and added things and it doesn't quite give you that same nutrition. That's creating a situation where sometimes you get the reward of nutrition and sometimes you don't. And intermittent reinforcement is the driving force behind all addictions. Now, where I think this is even more easier to see is with the addition of natural flavors. So natural flavors have been a new area that I've been researching in depth recently that is truly fascinating. And I've never heard anyone talk about natural flavors in this way. A lot of people think, well, natural flavors, they're natural. Natural flavors, they can come from the natural world, but they don't have to be from the food itself. So meaning, if you have strawberry flavor in something, it doesn't actually have to come from a strawberry. It can come from tree bark and leaves to create a molecule that slots into your taste buds the same way a strawberry flavor would. So let's say you have a strawberry flavored gummy bear. Right now, sometimes you're tasting strawberry flavor and you might get strawberry nutrition if you're actually eating a real strawberry. And sometimes you're tasting a strawberry gummy bear that has no nutritional value in it of a strawberry, right? It doesn't have any vitamins or minerals in it. So that also creates this intermittent reinforcement where sometimes we taste strawberry and we get the nutrition. Sometimes we taste strawberry in the gummy bear and we don't. And this creates a dire survival situation because your brain and body do not know how to source that nutrition. It doesn't know what to crave. Do we crave the gummy bear? Do we crave the strawberry? Because they're both signaling to me strawberry flavor, but I'm not sure which one is giving me the nutrition. And so this drives up our overeating on both the real thing of real strawberries and fake strawberry flavored things, because our body is trying to figure out where it's coming from. And if we're not getting enough nutrients from either of these sources, then we have to overeat more on them in order to potentially get that source of nutrition.
Interesting. So, throw another element that comes to my mind. We have horses. And both my wife and myself, we ride English dressage. And sometimes me listening to it, I don't deal with it on a daily basis other than to ride them, is saying that some of the hay that we buy has too much sugar in the hay. And I don't quite understand how could that happen. They said at certain point in the hay there is more sugary hay than there is the other hay. I don't know, this may be an element that, could that make sense? Well, obviously it makes sense because a lot of times they talk about that. If you talk about buying hay for the horses or have your own hay, then you always are aware of sugar. Is that element even applying to horses or animals, is saying you want to make sure that they don't overeat or do not get into the body too much sugar?
Yeah, I'm not super familiar then. Are you saying, do you know if they have added sugar into it or just the naturally occurring sugar in hay?
Natural occurring.
Okay. So in that case, if it's naturally occurring, a key element is being able to get a large variety of nutrients from many sources.
Right.
So there's a study that was done, less of a study and more of an experience that happened, where Arctic researchers, a long time ago,
Yeah.
when Arctic researchers were going to study the Arctic region, they would have only rabbit to eat. And rabbit meat is very lean and doesn't have a lot of fat. And what happened is a lot of Arctic researchers would die because they were trying to overeat on the rabbit meat in order to get the fat that they needed, because it does have a small amount of fat, but it's very lean. So they literally died of protein poisoning because there wasn't enough fat to digest it. But because it was the only food source available to them, that's what their body was trying to do. So the implications for this with animals could be, if the horses don't have any other options of what to eat and there are vital nutrients in the hay, it might need to overeat on it, even if they're getting too much sugar than their body wants in order to get those same nutrients. There's also implications for this on mixed animal feeds. So if you give your dog just, one type of chow that's all mixed together, the dog can't adequately source out, well, I need more of this nutrient, or I need less of this nutrient, and I'll crave this, and I'll eat less of this, because it's all in one thing. So they're just going to eat the amount that they eat in order to get the nutrients that they need. So same thing with humans, is if we don't have a large variety of nutrients available to us, if we are dieting and we're cutting out large food groups, we're saying no carbs, no fruit, no this, then our body might overeat on other foods to try to get these nutrients that these other food groups might have.
Yeah, so another thing comes to mind, and that's why this is so interesting. So that I do sometimes myself, I have a sweet tooth. So I don't buy candies, but I may take candies, and I like them, which are immensely sweet, and it's probably the wrong kind of sugar that is in there, but I'm attracted to it, or people develop a habit of eating too much or chewing on it too much or using it too much as a thing. A candy is a candy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for that, the first understanding is why it tastes good to you. Remembering that it tastes good because to your taste buds, it's signaling that based on the flavor of this, there's probably a large amount of nutrition. My guess is you're not just eating plain sugar cubes, right?
No.
It's probably candy that has that sugar and flavoring. And the addition of that flavoring to it is what is signaling ooh, this is it's a cherry flavor that tastes really cherry sweet. And so that must mean we're getting in a lot of cherry nutrition right now. But that's not the case. So that's the underlying reason why we think these things taste good and we want them. But in order to change that, that's where we want to understand a little bit more of our psychology and how our desire works.
Exactly.
So when we perceive something as valuable and as something that's necessary for our survival, as something that's offering us a survival benefit, we're going to want it more. So when I was binge eating, binge eating became a habit to a certain degree too. And it was because my brain started to perceive, oh, because I've done all these strict diets in my past, overeating and binge eating must be something that's necessary for me to stay alive now. And I need to do this, otherwise we might die because of all that restriction that we've done in the past. So anytime we have this perception that something is helping us and keeping us alive, it makes it really hard to change. So the key to changing that then is starting to see how we can view, foods with flavorings in it and foods with processed sugar and the act in general of binge eating as something that doesn't have anything to offer our body. The way that I love to do this is with visualization. So visualization is a really highly well-studied tool that is used by CEOs, executives, athletes all around the world to help them get what they want. Now, how we can use this around food is I like to imagine people taking two paths. And I do this specifically. I have this guided urge audio that will help you stop a binge in the moment that I can give you for the show notes that people can use. But this is essentially what I do in this audio. I just walk you through it in a more of a meditation hypnosis state. So when we imagine eating, we can first imagine what might happen if we act on the urge to eat. So let's say you're craving candy. You might think, oh, it's going to taste good. We usually start salivating because we're imagining that first bite. It's going to be so good. But what we want to do is tell ourselves the whole story. So let me back up. When we visualize, our brain does not know the difference between an imagined in-depth visual experience and something that happens in reality. So if you ever you're in your car and you're arguing with your partner in your head, and then you get home and you lash out at them and they're like, what happened? Because you just created a whole emotional experience for yourself in your head based on what you were picturing. So we know that we can use this to our advantage and our disadvantage. So if we imagine what happens when we tell ourselves the whole story, okay, maybe we eat the candy, it tastes good at first, but then what happens next? Then we're sluggish for the rest of the day. We've lost our energy. Maybe if we have a lot of it, we're not focused as much as at work. We don't want to work out that night. We're not able to sleep and our sleep is disturbed. We wake up feeling sluggish the next morning. And what we do when we do that is we're giving our brain that future memory of look at the negative consequences of this. Look what happens when we act on this urge and we don't feel good. And then we can imagine taking another path 2, where we sit with this urge, we sit with this craving. It goes away because it always goes away eventually. No one has ever come to me saying, Amber, I've been craving something for 24 hours straight every day of the week. It will go away if you let the craving go away. And when we do that, then we want to show our brain a very positive visual of what will come next. Then we'll be really proud of ourselves. We'll celebrate it. We're changing our brain and we're literally wiring in a new pathway of who we are and how we eat. We're able to focus better at work. We're able to have more energy throughout the day. We're able to hit the gym and actually get it done. We fall asleep that night easily and we stay asleep and we wake up the next morning feeling light and energized. That is now given our brain a clear visual of what we want instead and help giving us that blueprint of how to get there.
I like it. So the key then is that how do you learn to avoid it to start with? How do you change your mindset that automatically knows that, no, this is not good for me? You don't even deliberate it really if it is or it isn't, but that you know it can be something addictive in a way, or it's simply not part of your diet, not part of the things that you do. Like, and again, using an example, alcohol, at one point in my life, I drank more than was good for me, and that was probably 30 years ago. So then decided not to make that any more part of my life. Now I don't even think about it. So it's not part of my life. I'm not saying that it should or it should not be, but there's certain things in your life that say, no, that's not part of it. That applies to, food, but also to other things that can be potentially habit forming, but not necessarily good for you. So once and that goes to the mindset that you talk about, is that do you automatically, which I do, automatically say, no, I don't even debate it mentally, or if somebody offers me something, I say, no, thank you very much. It doesn't need an explanation because it's not part of what I do.
Right. John, I love that you shared that example of alcohol because I think that's something that all of us can grasp and maybe have even done before. And the reason that you were able to do that is because you started to perceive alcohol as more of a negative than a positive in your life.
Correct.
The people who struggle with alcohol is because they're perceiving it as more of a positive in their life than they're negative. Oh, it's bringing me fun, it's bringing me joy, it's bringing me connection. And they're looking at that more than they're looking at the consequences. And that's what makes it hard to change. And it's the same exact thing with food, where when we're perceiving binge eating and eating these foods as fun, as pleasurable, as giving us a break, as relaxing, of course we're not going to want to change it because who wants to get rid of something that's fun and exciting and pleasurable? But when we start to perceive it as this is something that's causing me harm and is not giving me anything good in my life, or the harm that it's giving me it outweighs any positive benefits that I get from it, that's when the habit can change easier. So a few things here. I love that you used this word avoid earlier because I think avoidance is the perfect word to describe what we want to try to do with sugar and flavored foods. Avoidance is the perfect balance between moderation and abstinence, right? Moderation being, oh, I try to have it sometimes, but the underlying belief beneath moderation is that this thing has something valuable to offer me still. So if we think I want to moderate it, it's like there's still some value to it. And that makes it kind of a sticky situation of, do I have it this time? Do I have it that time? And then it can get kind of complicated. But then abstinence of saying I'm never going to have it, it's just the reality of living in today's day and world. We're not going to be able to avoid 100% all processed sugar. And if we try to, it's going to be a very stressful way of living our life. And that's also not healthy.
No.
So I say avoidance is the perfect middle ground, where avoidance has this underlying belief that this thing is not offering me anything valuable. And so I'm going to do my best to avoid it where I can. But if it happens to pop up in something, or I have it accidentally somewhere, or I'm at someone's house and they put the sugary sauce over the entire meal, I'm going to choose to have it still because it also is going to be too stressful and too much of a hard thing to do to not have that at all. So I think about this a mindset of avoidance. Now, I really like using a couple of words around sugar and flavored foods, which is remembering that these foods are lying to you, that they're deceiving you, that they are tricking you. It's not that they are bad. Yes, we could say that sugar is bad, but it's more why it's bad. And it's because it's lying to you about what it is. It's this isolated molecule that when combined with other things, it's tricking our body. No one has ever come to me saying that they're binging on sugar water and sugar cubes. No. It is the sugar that is in combination with the flavor, and the flavor is hinting that something nutritious is coming in, depending on what it's flavored. Soda is essentially a lot of exotic citrus fruits and vanilla and, things all paired together in very fancy combinations to make the sugar water palatable. And all that sugar, the soda section is 100 different varieties of sugar water. Why do we think they're all different? Is because they have different flavors.
Exactly.
So seeing how all these different flavorings are lying to me, they're deceiving me, they're tricking me about what's actually in them, can help us see a little bit more insightfully, like, oh, this is why I don't want to have it, because it's not offering me anything valuable. And then I like to think about it too as, you don't want to tell yourself like we're cutting out sugar and everything's sweet. Because again, we have sweet taste buds for a reason. A lot of sweet foods that come from the natural world do have a lot of vitamins and minerals and amazing things to offer us. So we're not cutting out sweet things. We are cutting out the isolated molecule of sucrose that has been designed to make things taste better than they actually are. And that's what we're choosing. But we still can have fruit in all its major forms. People have been drying fruit for thousands of years. People have been making fresh squeezed fruit juices for thousands of years. We have honey, we have maple syrup. There was this one indigenous population, gosh, I forget the name of it, but they were said to have, in the winter months, 80% of their diet came from honey because that was one of their main sources for 2 months of the year. And their bodies did fine, right? Maybe if you had that 100% all day, every day, not so much, but our bodies can learn to process these things when they are associated with the natural source of flavor, letting our body know what's coming in so it can give us an accurate stop signal when we're done.
So I will be, in November the 1st, I will be 85 years young.
Mhm.
And so at some point in my life, I went through all the different things in terms. My wife, been together for 42 years actually. She is a vegetarian. I didn't listen quite as good as I could have along the way. Not saying that I was abusive necessarily, other than drinking too much at one point and changed that. We talked about that already. But then it takes sometimes a trigger of some sort that creates awareness. And so in my case, in 2008, when I was already 68 years old, I had a case of diverticulitis. And that, for the people watching us, is, I'm not a doc, obviously. If you have pain on the right side, it could be appendix. I'm not a doc, but that's what they say. On the left side, it could be a colon. And so that's what I had. And then it's not uncommon. And then the doc would say, change your diet, more greens, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. In my case, it breached. And so I had to go to the hospital. And you have only a limited amount of time when the toxins go through your body that start attacking the other organs. And a lot of pain goes with it, and I had resistance to pain, a high tolerance of pain, I should say. That's not good necessarily. It should put you down, then you go to the hospital. So in my case, by the time I got to the hospital, I had an operation that took 20 centimeters out of my colon. And then the following morning, the doc said, you came this close. That sent me a signal. So I started to listen more to my wife in terms of being a vegetarian. I became 80-20. Now I'm likely a 90-10. So the other part is that I was just like a lot of other people. I go take care of my body, go to the gym, and I would go at the end of the year. I go do this, that, and did this, and then I'm going to buy a membership to the gym, and then 2 weeks later I can find 100 reasons why I'm too busy to go to the gym. So I knew I had to change that. In the way, for me, I'm very involved in other things. I have a number of companies and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff, busy. But I knew that in order for me to do that, I had to create an appointment. So I hired a trainer. And so that was in 2009 when I had recovered somewhat from my operation. And I started working to the gym and with a trainer, and I took it very, very serious. And after about 6 years, somebody said to us, hey, John, have you ever thought competing? I said, me? Yeah. I already was in my early 70s. And so he said, oh, why not? So I did. And then in Northern British Columbia, I came in bodybuilding and physique. I came in second in bodybuilding, third in physique. In Northern British Columbia, qualified me for the provincials. Then did the same there, qualified me for the nationals, and then qualified me for the Arnolds. And then COVID came. Now, in the meantime, I'm 80-20, very conscientious about diet and all the other kind of things. And so, and then during COVID, didn't go quite as much to the gym because you couldn't be there, and did a lot of my training at home, but I stayed fit. And so now today, again, I'm training, and I feel so strongly about a diet and exercise in your body at any age that I wrote a book about it. So the book that I brought, it's a picture of me actually. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. And so living young, dying old, and that you can do this at how to thrive even in your mid-80s. And so, but the other part of it is very, very important, and I do that now 4 times a week. I go, still work with the trainer, still getting ready to compete again in the Arnolds in 2026. And this is the way I look now. And I'm very conscientious about diet. I'm a 90-10. Amazingly, you find this interesting. I do all the shopping for my wife and myself. So if I go to the grocery store, I shop inside the grocery store on the outside, because in the aisles they have all the processed and super processed food. If I don't know what is in it, it likely is not good for me. And so, and for us. And so we do a lot of greens and organic, and are very conscientious about diet. And then, so for me, what is important, I try to sleep 7 to 9 hours a night. The first thing that I do when I wake up, I take 10 ounces of water, and then something around that point, and then I have 3 or 4 boiled eggs and an avocado in the morning. Mid-morning, I have a protein drink, and then I go to the gym. Fits my schedule at 11 o'clock in the mornings, and with my trainer, and then I have a super double protein drink there. That is my lunch. And then again, mid-afternoon, I have a protein drink. And in the evening, a latter part of the evening, I have something more substantial. It could be a salad with chicken or fish, or another protein, so that it brings the protein into my body, because I train hard. And so that's what I do now. And then mentally, I stay very, very active, because I'm a very active podcaster. For one, I'm an author, and I have 10 different companies. It's not about that, but I'm a very busy individual. But going to the gym, to me, is the most important part of my life. I will set everything aside to get to the gym. And when I'm there, I have no cell phones or anything else that I see people in the gym and they sit in their cell phones. I don't do that. I'm training with a trainer, and I take it very, very serious. Quality of life, and that's also understanding the foods, and that's why you are so important on my podcast. And as people watching us from around the world, the same applies to them as the issues that you raised about binge drinking and eating, and that I speculate, and I do that on the basis of that. I add one more element to it, is that I'm also, and the reason that I mention neurodiversity is that I was diagnosed as ADHD and dyslexia when I was 62, and always had issues that I was wondering, who am I? Why am I different? And I mentioned that is simply saying that became part of my life. I call it now a superpower. And I speak about it more because I believe it is important, as it is. The other thing that I found, and that's why I raise it, is that initially I thought it may be 6 or 7% of it. But then the more I found out, and the more I talked to experts, in particular one, I found a book here in Prince George, in British Columbia. Actually, I bought the book in January of 1997 in a bookstore. And it is Driven to Distraction, written by Dr. Hollowell, medical doctor. He's a professor, knowledgeable, has written 18 books, and he is ADHD and has dyslexia. And the more I saw of this book, and the more I said, oh my God, that's me. And so, and that was when I was already then 57 years old. It took me 5 years before I would go to my doc, and he said, hey, John, why are you here? I said, I think I got ADHD. And so I do. And so I wrote that in the book. I wrote it in Dutch, actually, because I was ashamed of it, because it was implied that it's a mental disorder, which we know it isn't. And so, but at the time that I was building all kinds of operations and go-to bankers to lend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, and then saying, okay, here's my presentation. That's why the justification. And by the way, I got a mental disorder, and saying, have a nice day, right? So, not so today. But the point that I'm making, you're my podcast number 476. And my podcast number 203 is with Dr. Hollowell, and which was amazing. And as I interviewed Dr. Hollowell, I suggested that he's the expert, but I live it. Is saying that I believe, from all the things that I found out about ADHD and dyslexia, or ADHD in particular, that maybe 20% of the population are affected by it or have the benefit of it, some people would say. And he said, no, John, probably 25%. And I agree with them. And so, and at the same time, I had met a lot of people that are very, very successful in business or entrepreneurs. And I found that probably, and I suggested that to Dr. Hollywell, that probably 50% of them are ADHD. He said, no, John, probably 75%. And I agree with him. And so the point that I'm making is this one, Amber, respectfully, correct me if I'm wrong, that the binge eating percentage of people in North America, and the same would be in Canada, and I believe the rest of the world, is not 3%. It's probably much higher than that. Simply a lot of people, as you already indicated, are not going to go out there and say, hey guys, girls, I'm out there, I'm a binge eater or something. So it's probably much, much higher than that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I would agree with you with that, because if you look at in the US now, 3/4 of the population is obese or overweight. You know, there's something that is going on there. And I think a lot more people struggle with binge eating than they admit. A lot of people are really ashamed about it. And that's the big thing that keeps people from getting help in a lot of different areas. And with food, I always just like to remind people that at the end of the day, all you're doing is eating food. Yes, it might be more food than your body needs. Yes, it might not be the type of food that you want to be eating, but you're just eating food. Like, no one out here is murdering anyone, killing puppies. We're just eating food. And so we can use that to take away the shame from it and say, you know what, I'm eating food and there is help for this. There is a way out of this. There is a solution out of this. And if you think about it, you know, obesity didn't start to become a problem until like the 1960s, 1970s, when a lot of these processed foods became introduced, when we are able to start adding all these isolated molecules and flavorings to our food. So it's never an individual problem. And I think a lot of people around food blame themselves of, I just need to try harder. I've let myself go. Like what's happened to me? When almost any time you look at a food issue, and really any, you know, issue in general with people, it almost always makes sense if you look at it from how is this a survival benefit to them and how might their brain perceiving this as something that's helpful.
That's why I wrote the book. It's not about me as, you know, this is John, the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. I simply say anything is possible at any age. And the reason that I'm there, I wasn't always there. At times that I was drinking more than was good for me. And then I was not eating as well as or understanding food as well as I could have and should have, is that once you get to the point of that, at the end of the day, it's all about quality of life. And quality of life means being able to interact in your families and other things that you would like to do. The last decade of most people's lives are not very pleasurable because they have hands full of medicine that are toxic in a lot of cases. Help one thing, but not a help or created problems for other areas, is understanding the quality of food in particular, and diet, and then exercise. Don't have to become an Olympian or a bodybuilder. That's not the point. Is if you wish, you can or go towards that, but what is important is that you understand what goes into your body and why, and then the results of it, to have mental efficiency still at an older age, and I'm an example of that at 85. I'm probably one of the most active podcasters. I have well over 1 million subscribers on YouTube, and I do a lot of podcasting. At the same time, I run 10 different companies. I'm at the same time active as a bodybuilder, going to the gym, riding horses, and doing all these other things, and it is not, so it is not because of I can't, but it's because I know it has become my life, and my quality of life is to understand it. And a lot of times, and as you already said, sugar has become something that you must understand it as to what it means, and that's why your podcast is so important. And did you write a book as well, Amber, about this?
I haven't, but one day it should be coming. I would love to write a book one day, so it will be in the works. But I do have a podcast, Become a Confident Eater.
So the other thing that I'm going to say is that the first thing that I saw you, and I hope you take that from this 85-year-old guy, is saying that you are attractive, and you look very, very good, and you are fit, and so it is very, very important, and I feel I have an obligation to share with others at least my life part that may be helpful to others, and that is very rewarding. That's why I write the books that I do, working on my sixth one, and the sixth one is You Can. And so that anything is possible at any age. But the other part that I believe that in particular, so much information out there, and then as we all know, the traditional television stations that we know, CNN, ABC, NBC, and all the other ones, we watch them all. And then in Canada, the different Canadian broadcasting, CBC or BBC, and then Europe, all the same. There are so many different views and so many advertisements. The quality or the viewers are reducing gradually more and more in the traditional television stations and also in the newspapers. I believe that the future of media is in podcasting, as we do with this podcast. Is an example. We never met before. Obviously, I saw your bio. It is the interesting conversation that you and me are having here about topics that have been extremely important in my life. You're an expert, and you have gone through all the ups and downs around it, and be sharing that with others. And the other part that I do in my podcast, and you are my podcast number 476. I read, all the podcasts that I do, they are unedited. I release them in 2 hours, and to share with other people around the world very important topics like this one about binge eating, which is something affecting the rest of the world, and a lot of people will be looking at it, and hopefully it will, and I know it will, be helpful to a number of people that will motivate them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. It's definitely an important concept to talk about and to share about. And I think the more we can talk about it, the more we release the shame from it. And if anyone is struggling, I'd invite them to even just you don't have to tell everyone in your life, but whether that's a trusted coach or therapist, or even reaching out to me, I'm always happy to have conversations with people, just opening up about the struggle. I like to think about it as you're taking, everything out of the attic that you've kept hidden for so long, and that makes it so you can actually change it. You can organize it. You can sort through it. You can make things anew. But if you keep things hidden away in the deep, dark attic, nothing can really change.
It makes me wonder, and why does therapy always work for people, doesn't work always for people struggling with binge eating? Why doesn't it, other than motivation at that point? Or I'm not looking at it as a negative, but for me it took certain things that happened to me that made me change that part is no longer part of my life. How do they get to that point, and why didn't they at the time of therapy? Is it simply because there are so many elements of therapy that don't address some issues maybe?
Yeah, that can be part of it. I think this is a few things. One, like I mentioned, because binge eating was only recognized as an eating disorder in 2013, there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of concept out there that are more theories versus things that have actually worked for people. When someone is working with a therapist, oftentimes the therapist hasn't been there themselves, versus when they're working with a coach like me who has been there in their shoes. I know what it's like to struggle with binge eating. I can relate to their experience a bit more and give them practical tools. And the big difference between therapy and coaching is therapy tends to focus a lot on the past. Now, for a small population of people, binge eating did start from a sort of trauma, a lot of times a sexual trauma can be involved with binge eating. So there are a handful of people that do need to address that part first in therapy. But what I found is for pretty much every client I've worked with, myself included, if we try to go to therapy, we just find ourselves getting caught in the past and not learning actionable tools and skills. But how can we change right now? And what do we want for our future? Because yes, looking at our past is important, but if we stay stuck there, we're not able to learn like, well, what do we want to do next, and look at our future, which is what coaching does, is really look at, okay, where do you want to go and how can we get there? And what tools and actionable skills do you need now? So, therapy again can help with a lot of the emotional side of things, but the emotional side of things is not the only thing that we need to address when we're looking at binge eating. We also need to address the aspect of food. We also need to address the aspect of urges, of these cravings, and knowing how to sit with them. We need to address your body confidence and your thoughts about bodies. There's just a lot else outside of just looking at your emotions and your past history, which is what most people tend to do in therapy. So it's not that therapy is wrong or bad. It can be an awesome first step for people who are wanting to stop binge eating, but I find that it is just that. It's usually just a first step and not the whole complete journey.
And then the other part about it is possible once you understand it and see examples like you went through yourself as an example, myself for one, is that once you do, the amazing part about it in combination with fitness and mental and physical fitness, because you only got one body, and that is precious, and all the things that we do with it and to it become very, very important. The other part that I found is that, like even if you go for a walking and then get more information, understanding food, how important is it? And obviously there is a lot of money in food as there is in medicine, that it's not always all good for you. The better you understand it, the better it is. And once you start working towards it, what you will see guaranteed between exercise, living and understanding food as to what you put into your body, what will happen is that people will say, hey Amber, or hey John, what are you doing? You look great. And all of a sudden you start feeling more positive about the things that you do. And as it then becomes a way of life and saying, I want to be like that as well. And it can be at any age, and I'm an example of that as well, is saying that quality of life, especially as you get old, very, very important. And I love all the things that I do. I love the food that I eat. Understanding my diet is important. As I said earlier, my wife, vegetarian, but I do all the shopping, and she trusts me in what I do, because that's what I do. I go to the gym, and I love going to the gym. After this podcast is over, I'm going to the gym, training hard. That works for me. But for anybody else, even if you start with walking and start understanding diet, make it a saying, I want to understand it. So because as you already indicated, and I say this respectfully, far too many people are overweight dramatically, not only in the United States, but also in Canada and other places, is that diet extremely important in understanding and physical fitness. And what it does create is, as I wrote this book about, is quality of life. And that's, at the end of the day, what it is all about, mentally, physically, and, and feeling good about yourself. Very, very important.
And John, you have this great story of kind of like this rock bottom moment, or like this moment where you're like, I feel inspired to change. And you have this beautiful example of turning it around. One way we can do that is also with visualization of sometimes in a client session, I'll have them imagine taking a remote and fast forwarding, to when they're 85. And let's imagine that they don't take a charge of their health and they are overweight. They can't get out of bed in the morning. They can't go to the gym. They can't play with their grandkids. They feel sluggish all day. They're going to the doctor for the third time this week because of their health issues. We can give our brain that like clear image ahead of time and almost like imagining as if we're there now. And that can spark the same sort of inspiration and transformation without actually having to go there first. We can give our brain that picture of what if life was like that, and then use that to spark our transformation now.
And as I will write in my next book, which is coming out next June, you can. Anybody, you can. You're never too old. There are no reasons for it, and the results will be extremely rewarding. and fairly quickly, because you will start feeling the difference fairly actively, and then from there and then saying, this is the way I want to live.
Mm-hmm.
Amber,
Absolutely. I love that.
Amber, it was a privilege to have you on my podcast. Very, very important topics. And let's make sure we stay in touch. And for all the people watching us, is that, have you got a contact point, Amber, you can share with the people watching us?
Yeah, so the best place to find me is at my website, theconfidenteater.org. And that's where you can find my podcast called Become a Confident Eater. I also have my free audio on my website, which is to help you stop a binge, how to get through these urges in that moment. So it's a 7-minute audio that walks you through these visualizations. So that's a good way to stay in contact with me as well.
Amber, and for all the people watching us, if you like our discussion, which I'm sure a lot of people will like around the world, subscribe to our podcast, both Amber's and mine. Like it if you like it. Share it with others. Make comments on it, because the objective that Amber has, and I do as well, is to sharing our experiences with others and give them, stimulus for quality of life. It's ultimately, you only have one life to live. It can be very, very rewarding, and it's not overly complicated, but understanding it is critical. Amber, it was a pleasure to have you on my podcast. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me, John.
Take care.